Hello everyone, welcome back to another video from Winter Forest. Now we come to the second part. It is set up the API backend. Our API backend will have a MongoDB and Redis dependence. So I'm going to first running the Redis and the MongoDB first in my local. In a real project, you probably don't need to spin up a MongoDB and Redis in your local. You suppose use a cloud service. But for demo showcases, it is quite a convenience. Just split it up in your local DB and local computer server. And they are going to use a Docker Composer, just pull up the image running in my local computer. So you suppose have a Docker installed it in your computer. And before I started the projects, I just created some photo in here. So I'm going to I just run some Linux commands. So first make a direct folder for my projects. I'm going to name it load authentication. Then I cd into it. And inside this folder, I'm going to, at the moment, if I'm going to view, it is empty. I'm going to create a view file, view folder. I'm going to have the API folder for our API side, and then I will have a client folder for our client app for React application. And the API we are built in Node Express. Like I said before we start our API, we actually required MongoDB and Redis. The Redis is caching layer stored the session, and the MongoDB it actually is the database for store the created user. So I'm going to first have a Docker Composer file. Now you see I have two folder and one file. And for the Docker Composer file, I'm going to, when I speed up the MongoDB, I'm going to need one database in there. So I'm going to have a MongoDB init script share. I'm going to create the file first. Now I have two folder, two file, and also I'm going to init the package in here. I use -y, it's going to have a default setting for you. Now we just open this projects folder in VS Code. For start the Docker Composer file, I'm going to just grab the image. Instead of writing, I just copy paste, and we could talk from here. Basically, I'm going to have two servers running before this API service is created. So we have a dependence on the image is the Mongo. So if I don't have, when I started, it's going to pull the MongoDB. And this is the environment variable I'm going to use. So like for the, I give the root username, like root secret. And I give this database name is called authentication. And the MongoDB, and you log in, you have a login admin and a secret. And this one going to running in my local folder, just in here. So actually I could just make a folder over there. So then you have the data folder in here. When I start init this up, this is going to run Mongo init. It is this file mongo init, and this use the Docker via init this database and write and out. This the redis is simple, just have the image and the port. The command just require secret. This just for your parser get into non-command and just put a secret. You could dig into redis share. You could to view what the session you stored in here. For the MongoDB and init file, I'm going to just copy paste. Also just talk from here. So in here, I just open both. Once I run this Docker Composer up, it going to run the init the image, then create this volume database, then run this script file. This called MongoDB database. It is this author line, so you paste it in here. So the Mongo will run the command in this database, and this database, the authentication database, will create the user, and the Mongo, the user name is admin, and the password for this database could access it. So you have admin and the password for going to this one, and the role actually is could read and write it. So this can be and just spin up quite quickly. And for be able just to running by in here, so I'm going to put some scripts in here. You could run Docker Composer.app, but you actually also could just run npm run app, then you put a Docker Composer command in here. I expect this photo existing before to run it because the database installed in the data. So I make sure it over there. So if I say Docker Composer and build this photo first, then Docker Composer up, and -d means this running in the background. And once this done, you could put this up, and if you finish, you could put this down. Just copy Docker Composer down. You also could just say stop. This is stop, Docker Composer down and Docker Composer stop. It actually is stop these two servers. It won't stop there. Then we have an API. I'm going to have the API. API is our dev, and like as then you could npm run and dev, and I put this prefix. So it's going to not run npm run dev. It actually run inside this one. And yeah, I put some keywords over there. The API will be TypeScript, but our front it is React.js, and we also the front we just use JavaScript, and also we have a MongoDB, and also have a redis. Currently, change my name Sandy, and this is MIT. Now we have this. We could just use this app. You could, but either see nothing. I'm not going to do at the moment. And since we have this is set up, I'm going to do second thing, just to do the API. So I'm going to set it to the API level. inside this API could be running independent to the client side. So I'm going to also do npm init and -y and have the default setting. Once I have the default setting, I actually need a few things. I won't go into install each package by package. I'm going to copy paste the lead one and I'm going to talk through it. So we have our API. Like I said, when you run npm run dev, it actually is run this command. We're going to use TypeScript node developer, and this is going to build the TSC going to build. Then this have a build file just in here. Before build, we remove the disk, and I just put my name over there. These keywords are similar to these keywords, but non-React. We don't have React and JavaScript, so it is MongoDB. We also have Express. And I have a few things installed in here. The happy is for the validation. Happy joins for the validation, the data schema. And the be equipped is when you install the password, I will use encrypted. Connect redis is when we start running. So once the MongoDB and redis is up, we are going to use this one. The Express session, it is going to initiate the session cookie for you requested. The iOS DS is working with the redis. And then have a mongoose, it are going to perform better query. So we actually don't have too many dependencies. Mainly is Express session. Instead use memory session, we use redis, cache this, use redis, save it. And the mongoose is going to access your MongoDB to store the user information. Then the rest for it is for the type purpose. In here I could use TSC init, but actually just we are in this API we actually not everything in the TypeScript, so we need to tell the TypeScript and how to compile it. So I'm going to in here we could attach a file. You could use TSC init. It will also init this file with all of the default setting. I'm going to copy paste my previous setting in here. So basically, I uncommented this one. So this the target. It will be EX next for the when this combined to the JavaScript. So it include all of these features. If I hover it, you see the Xma. Script target version, all of these features will be included. The model is compiled to the common JS, and this source map to choose it allowed you to debug, and the output to the folder. So in here we have a DSC file. Our root directory will be and the RSC, so it go into the RSC to compile everything. So we write everything in the RSC file. And then you revert the comments, and this like a restrict more, and yes, this and this include it means only transpile from SC and or everything inside this file, the TS file, and we installed a library, and this is going to not included. Since I copy paste then package photo API package.json. So we're going to install the package first. I'm inside the API, so I'm going to npm run install the package. Since it install, we could start write our code. So then we're going to start IndexedDB. It installed quite very quickly. All of the package is installed. Now in here we have index.ts. So everything is TypeScript and have nothing to do different. And we also have app.js. Actually, I could combine type and app.js to one. But for test purpose, if you write a unit test, it is better doing in this way. So our app just start our app. In here we going to include Express. Include mongoose. Also, we're going to use the session. This going to init session to put into the request, and so you have a session cookie pair. But they are going to have a config file. So when you install something and everything supposed to put in a config file, going to in here I have a config folder. Then inside the config folder we have a index.js. So we're going to have a few settings in here, and one is the app.ts, like the port ID and this kind of thing. Then we have our author.ts config, and also our cache ts, and then the session.ts session. For the app, it is simple. It is just our port, and also our environment, either is dev environment or production environment. And from the author, we're going to this when we encrypt this user password, we're going to use it. So I define we use the bcrypt. Now going to our caching layer. And this is, we use TypeScript, so you actually have the redis option. Once you use it, this is going to, you open this port, and this the host when you started in the local host, and the port it actually is in here, what you say, new 6379. And this the secret, it is what you defined also in here, the secret. So this for read your caching layer. Once you start this one, because you start here, all of this information will be in the process. So we actually define in here. So you start the redis. If you serve it in another folder, you just read it out in here. By default, I'll put it in here. Then we have our session. And you could define it 1 day. This is a half hour. And session secret, you could just put whatever you like it. And session name, it normally is SID. And session timeout, it is defined saved half hour, and this is a session option, and we just put in here. So it actually is session cookie here in the request. You could see in the cookie just over there. This setting is for our database and setting. These are all of the default when we start. And so I just put each session setting to separate, so you could change easily. And in previous, we just in here you use dot. It means actually going to the index. This import that actually is the app. And since we have this dot, we are going directly to the index. So this is quite a convenience. I believe in 2020, ECMAScript 2020 also included this feature. You can directly export this out. So actually, when you reference, you only need a /config. It's going to reference all of this configuration. Now we're going to our app, going to build our servers. I just instead of typing, I just copy all of the input first. We haven't built a lot yet, and the middleware we haven't created. When we start creating, we're going to talk about it. So since this is a config going to set up the skeleton code. So we start our app equal to express. Now we have our mongoose. We connect to this mongo URL. And this mongo option. This we previously defined the config. This is a promise, so we're going to use them to invoke it. Once we connect, we actually don't need to do anything. But if it is when we connect have error, we just catch it. Now we're going to so we have our afterwards we're going to have a redis store. This is for the session. Have the redis option to open the redis instance in here. Now app.use, and for the session, so instead of just use the memory session, we actually just split this is the default session, the session option. This is the session they required, and instead, if you don't have a store, we actually use the in-memory session express. But in here we have our own store, so we're going to use this redis inside this one. So this store, it is use the redis as a store instead in memory. So it actually could easy to extendable. Have this one going to use app.use and express.json. This in previous, you need to use body parser, and this something at the moment the new version express.json just automatically pass this for you. And we're going to have once we're done, we actually just could export and the default app. Before I'm going to export, we don't have any page yet. So I'm going to create app.use. I'm going to have a note font. Everything, the note over there, we're going to handle in here. And we're also going to handle every server error. If have a server issue, like a MongoDB or our server is down, we are going to handle in here. And now we need for this no found and the server, we actually use a middleware to handle it. So I'm going to touch. You could this haven't input, so we actually going to in here make directory called the middleware. I'm going to in my middleware. I'm going to handle this not found issue. Refresh. Did the middleware appear in here? In here. And I'm going to export everything from there. I don't have a data, so that's here. I'm going to fill this out. I just copy paste. We could talk through it. We just need to have a non-found and we need this type issue. So we have the typing installed. So we're going to input request response. So everything, if we have a non-found and a server issue, so we're going to return 404, and this is the server issue requested. Now we could input it into our here. Then we could include it into the app.js. Yeah, it is this one. So we have the server. middle ware. What happened? Can't the folder in the app. Oh no, what happened? I said that everything supposed to be inside the src file and move the folder into here. What? This is middleware. What's the difference? Okay, and once I have this one, now we have no font. So now in our app, I said I'm going to create 3 nodes, but this all authentication nodes, so I'm going to just put in one. are going to have these loads, and these loads suppose have this nodes photo. These loads suppose to include this 3 load. Just let me create it. Out. Yeah, cd to src file. Now in cdis, I need a photo. I just copy paste in case I type in no. Then I see to the load. I'm going to have an index file, put everything, touch index.ts file, and this is going to export it out. Now I'm just create our load. One is the login, one is the register. Login are going to put the login and the logout all in our login. Since I'm in here, I'm going to just touch login.ts, and I also have a sign in page. I call it like a register, I believe. GISTER typescript, and another file if you get in, suppose going to profile.ts. Yeah, and now we just fill out for the login. We accept 2 things. We start the load, and we get an instance of a load. And in the end, we just export our default load. Same for each other. Login, profile, register. Then in the index, we did export the out. We're going to have the node, and are going to include their in, and then I have an instance of this load, and then I'm going to expose the load out. At the moment I have nothing, and so I'm going to have an instance of our root load, and this instance root load is followed by API/v1, then / going to include this load, and this load going to use this one. So I just simply say loads.use register nodes.use login, and loads.use profile. And now we just fill it out for the login. And in here is nothing, but once I actually expect this load to have 2 rows, post one for the login, then this is our callback function. I'm going to here get the request and respond, going to the MongoDB inserted, then return. If this exists, I'm going to just return an error. And how about this one, load.post, and we have you could log in, then you have a log out. Also have the request response, and this is going to get rid of usation. And first, just let we just write our login are going to this since going to the database, the action is a promise, so I'm going to use async await. And actually, we expect you have a username and a password. In here, we have a mongoose, so we're going to like I insert the joy to do a Json validation. I'm going to write here, then we fill out this one, validate. I'm going to put in somewhere else. I won't directly use the in here. We are in our error to handle this validation. So I expect in the error, middleware in the error could handle this validate. So if I export validate and take a constant, I'm going to expect you have the login schema. This will be user joy, and you request the body. I just compare to these two, see if you are valid or not. In here, if invalid, it's going to throw exception. So this is your body. And to do here, this the schema, and this is the user, this is the object of need. Since here is the user, maybe I could name it just, and we actually, it is typescript, we actually need a schema. And in here, the schema action is from, this is the object schema. I mean, I include here, it will just direct put in here because the TypeScript, that is the good thing TypeScript bring to us. So you have the choice, and this is the schema, and these objects, it is you request the payload, and this can be I just use any, and but you need a mapping this payload to this one. In here, going to this validation also is a promise, so I use a async function. So you could put in try catch. Inside the try catch, I'm going to await the schema validation. Okay, this is your schema. So you're going to define the schema, what you defined. Then we use validation async, and you validate this payload. And this if I don't allow this about early to false. So if it is invalid, going to here. Once you have a validation error, are going to slow you. Look like you suppose don't go into here, so going to have a bad request. And I'm going to create a bad request in our errors. So in our errors, we actually have a bad request. I need to handle 404 and 404 also server error. I'm going to have a place and handle this error. I'm going to have another folder just instead of with this one. It is since this is TypeScript, I believe I just need we're going to use the HTTP payload, and our bad request going to implement this HTTP port. So the bad request extended this one, and this status we just give a 404. The message is what you passed in by default. It is a bad request. So I could include this bad request in our middleware in this error. So I actually need a bad request. So you need a coming out, coming out. What is the errors? It is this one, bad request, bad, i.e. missing e, bad request. So this is accept the error. So if you go into here, the implement, and I inherit HTTP error and it accept this error. So it is by default called bad request. And then this error message will instantiate in here. And if we give a status, bad request is 400. Okay, now we go back. Validate is finished, so I could use the in here to validate. I think I just put in here. This middle, we are supposed to expose the in here, so every error. So if you go into here, this validate, go into validate validate our login schema. Then I need the login schema. Then I need to define our login schema. And the second thing is the payload is request.body. Now I can expect the login schema. Login schema, how about just put in here? Since in the error, I'm going to have a login schema. Login schema actually is not the error. I put in another folder is used for your authentication. So we say all.ts and the login schema. It actually just username and password copy post, and we need to input the joy and email going to have this validation. We expect the email is string and is email the minimum length and the maximum length to lowercase string, and it is required. This is join validate your JSON schema and the password. Password we're going to encrypt it. We actually have in our config file, so we could import it. Why? Oh, because this is common. You actually the max be encrypted. We're going to use UTF-8 and this to regularly check your password and lowercase need a lowercase, also need a uppercase. This lowercase, this uppercase. I think this is uppercase, this is lowercase, and include a digit number. Message is if you have error, this is meaning for error message just returned. Since this only have required, it will just return required. By default, it will return required. So everything didn't pass this regular message, it will return this field. Password must contain one upper letter. So this is upper letter and one lower letter, and one digit. Dot means at least one digit is allowed. So this is the login validation. So we go back to our login. So everything in here, if I have an issue, so I need to export it in here. Then you're going to log in. You could use everything not in here. The validation file, it will go into 404. You see, so we handle separately. We go back to our login. If their past didn't go into fail, then we just continue. We get the username and this just distract the username, the email, and the password from your request.body. And in here, we're going to use MongoDB to find this user is existing or not. If it is existing, then we will return error, and if not, you actually just respond to JSON. So you actually save it into message. Okay, so it means finish. And in here, we're going to do MongoDB to find it. And if we use MongoDB, then we need a Mongoose. And the Mongoose are going to, it is our data model. So we're going to create a model folder. Let them sit together in here. Have a model. First model is our user. We actually only have one model for this application. We have a user typescript. We export everything out just using index.ts. So we actually just expose everything from user. And since we have nothing, we have an error show. Once I put something over there, it is fine. I'll just copy paste and talk through it. And we actually use the Mongoose schema, and then this model we are going to use Mongoose model And this, since the database MongoDB's documentation, we have this one. We define since this is a TypeScript, so we need to define an interface. We expect to have an email name and password. So when you log in action, we're going to have three things. So when you create it, you're going to create an email and name and the password. And this they match password, and you compare this match or not. And now you have the schema. Now we have the user schema. The user schema, by default, we're going to have a timestamp to choose. So before you're going to save this user document, we actually do this pre-save. We're going to see is password modified. We're going to hash this password. So this password won't be saved in a plain text. It actually will be decrypted. And this is the previous we just defined it. And the method we just compare this to the validation, compare the matching, the password and this password is matching or not. And this they said just transfer, you're going to transfer the documentation, and this is our user schema. Transfer to this user schema, so we match them. In our database, we will have this user. For detailed understand how to use Mongoose, I actually suggest you take a Mongoose tutorial. But in our application in here, it's quite simple. We save this email name, password, and password match, convert the password into our database. Before saving into, we actually do encrypt it. Then also for this compare password, just compare if they actually it is the same password. If it's not, we're going to direct through exception, so we could tell the user and the password doesn't match. And now we have the user schema. We're going to use this user can search our database to check if this user exists or not. So we continue go back to our login. And now we could use this schema and to do some validation. This user, how do I know it is this user? Because in the model we exposed to user. This key is this one, user model. Just like in you, this actually similar like if you're working in a .NET Core, you actually make this model into a database entity instance. Go back to the login. Now we're going to use the user to see, since the email is Unicode, we're going to see, because you're going to log in, I'm going to check if you are in the database or not. If you are, so the user going to find this by the email. And if no user, it means you haven't existing, or the user, the password no match. This is the password you passed in and from here. So if you go here, in here are going to do a match password. Match password, the method actually is compare the match patch and with this saved in our database. This is going to encrypt it and compare this plain text they match or not. Yeah, and then go back if you are not exist or either your password is not a match, we're going to slow error, and instead I just say error, I'm going to say create a particular error for our user, because this user action is unauthenticated. So inside our arrow are going to say unauthenticated arrow. Now I'm going to create a particular arrow to handle this kind of error. So you cannot pass authentication, means you unauthorized. If unauthorized, we just return this one. Since I exposed this one, instead we are going to return unauthorized. I think it can directly import this. Did I have an error in here? It is this one. Make sure it's in here. Go back to login. And we just give a meaningful message. We don't give too many meaningful. I just copy paste. So incorrect email or password, because if we trying to let the user have less guess, if we tell them just password not correct, they probably just keep test the password. And so if you have even just 3 exception, otherwise it means here, and until they will have do nothing to do the session. If you log the in, are going to have a session. So instead of writing in here, I just going to log you in. I'm going to have a login and log out, because I don't like to handle all of the code just in here. So I just trying to move away from here, and I put in authentication. I don't think I need a slash in here either, but if you don't have error, by default going to index. I'm going to have a photo for the author photo. If I'm coming out, then I need to have a photo for called the author. Okay. And then also we have a login and logout. I just copy paste it. We talk through it. And why this? I'll put it in the index control A. Config. Session name, it is SID, and this index, yeah. So we have we have login, log out. Also, we going to check is logged in. In here, I just see this request have the session and this user ID. And for more production, when you actually also check this user ID is in our database or not. And otherwise, you suppose everybody pass a user ID, you're going to accept it. It's not good. But for this demo showcases, I just see if this user ID is existing or not. If the request have a user ID, it just means this logged in. This for demo showcases. In real production, you're supposed to go into the data, go into your redis, see this user ID actually is valid or not. And log in, if you log in, we actually just give this request session our user ID. The user ID is the, and if log out, we actually just destroy this one and clean the cookie and resolve it. Now we go into the login. We actually, if I come out, I would also, we have a login. We don't have a login. Oh, it's called a login. So if I go into here, I'm going to use the user.id. User ID as user.id. Now actually expect a request and this user ID. You could put in the same file, just a request.in. You could, you see, you actually can just directly put in a request.session user. If they don't have the user ID, we just give a user ID. And I just moved away, so it actually put in here is also same, just for the, so try to short this function in here. So the function in here, we first validate it is valid or not. If it is, we continue get the email and the password. If the email password is, the email is existing, then we're going to test if the password match. If match, then we log this person in. Then log in, and I just and in here it is simply just log out. The log out is also a sync await function. The log out, since we already write it, and we give the request, we actually just destroy, remove the cookie session from the request, and then we give a response of the JSON. I missed you, okay. Instead of typing, okay, respond ISP. We have a log in and log out, but we actually, you see, we haven't, every exception happened in here, we haven't handled it. So I'm going to handle every exception just in one function. So either is server error or no found. For this one action is like the. So I'm going to create a catch async function in our middleware. And this one will handle any this inside exception, because in here can be 3 exception, also in here, and this one won't, but in here can be 3 exception. Instead of handle everywhere, we just handle in one place. So in our middleware, handle all of the error just by once. Copy paste over there. Don't handle in here, the action handle. Where handle the error? The no found, where put the no found? It is in here. This valid is supposed to put in here. And this is the request handle. We actually expect request, response, and the next function. And this one, so any exception happened inside this function, it's going to catch the in here. So actually just and once this is catched, so it either return to the no found, you have a message going to here, or it going to this server error. But for validation schema, I don't think I'm supposed to put it in the errors here. This is validated. How about just have a validate? This to the model, we could have a validate for this have nothing to do the end of this action. I'm going to create another folder called validate. Handle all of the validation. This is a validation to do with the joy. And this no found I put in here is I'm going to remove this. This action nothing to do error. This is validation, and this is related to joy, and this action is not error. I input the joy over there. coming out, going to error cc error 100. And because this is more like validated, so suppose not see the in that. And then the login, actually this validator actually it's not from the here. Validate is supposed to from validation. How about the login schema? The schema, login schema, more like a to-do. Login schema, where I put login schema actually put in here. The also put in middleware. I believe the login schema also related to joy. I'm going to also put in here. Actually, this middleware, this also more care about you log in, log out. This actually not in the middleware. This actually supposed in here in the validation. Because this more related to there. So if you go into the login and this schema, suppose not from here, the more from here, in here. This more makes sense for me. And this is actually more like a schema validation. So like related to the model I put in here. The middleware also will be check you are logged in or logged out or not logged in. Let me copy something over there. The schema middleware we are working with the request response. So I'm going to check you have logged in or not. If you logged in, then we're going to check you have this session and with you or not. You see in here. I only check you have the user ID have a session, but actually it's supposed to go into the redis, see this session is existing or not, because the redis will automatically expired. So if this session not existing in redis, then you can, it means you didn't log in. And say either check you are the guest. If you are not the you are the guest, then you move to log in. So you don't need to log in again. And this is the authentication. It actually just check if you are logged in or not. So check for example in the profile are going to check you are logged in or not. If you are not logged in, you suppose don't do it again. And this catch sync also catch here the log out will also cannot have any exception. Then you're going to handle just over there. And log out you actually in here. Then is this authentication like a guest, and also it is more make sense in here. I think I type in you're the guest or you already passed the authentication. So in here, if you are the guest, I don't need you log in again, but this doesn't, yeah. And in the authentication, you log out, you first I need to check you have a session or not. So this is more make sense to put in here the author. This author is authentication. You are logged in or not logged. Auth means you already authorized, and the guest means you haven't authorized. And this for the login. Once we have a login, then we have the register. Register will be similar to the login. We just copy paste, and now things getting simpler since we have all of this 100. And the guest, you actually also accept a post, but instead you also check you are guest or not. If you are not a guest, then you're going to if you are not a guest, you already log in, you don't need to show this register to the customer. And in here, this also is just a global catch. For anything happening in here, you have an issue. So if you are the guest, you haven't logged in, and then we go into validation here. Register schema going to just write it because this register schema have more data. You need to have an email name and a password, and you're going to see this one already registered. If already registered, you just throw error. So instead, you just in here return response and invalid. So actually catch the in here. So it will be that request will in here return. And if you are the user is not existing, then going to create the email and the name and the password. And then log you in, give the request have this session, and you export. Now we just simply need to have this register schema. Register schema register schema supports inside this validation. In here, the validation, we actually have a login schema. Now we expect to have a register schema. We also need to join objects. Instead of validation 2, we actually validate 3, and going to accept the email and also have a name and the password and the password confirmation if the typing the second password is correct. And now in here, going to instead in here, you see are going to have 2 places to use. So email just email in here. And for the password, we use it in 2 places. So we say constraint password equal to this one. And now we need to have a confirm the password. We go into compare this and password. They are referred. Going to validate, see they are and the same. And if not, it will throw give a meaningful error message. And the name is simple. The name just have the name is a string, and maybe give them at least a minimum 3 characters up to 128 characters, and we get rid of the white space, and this is required. So this is for the data schema validation. Look like we just done. Now we can test it. See if missing anything. Now if I go into our app, we start our app, and instead of use memory cache, we are able to use our redis cache, and we start this load, and not have this 3 load. The profile load haven't defined, or haven't did the profile. Profile load is simple. We just give the user information. Actually, in my UI, I didn't use this to display. And you suppose just make a profile to the back end, then display this profile in your front. And the profile is much simple. We just copy paste. And we go into, if the profile is get, then you go into the use. You're trying to find this is existing, then you return this user. And this is the ID, so you could use the user ID, go into the database, find the user. Before I go in, you make sure this person is passed the authentication. That's why I just put everything in separate file so you could reuse. And go back to app. I believe this need to put before to the JSON path. And everything have, since we have the catcher sync, so everything if I have error, either we are going to read, you have a meaningful bad request, it going to non found. If you don't have, you then go into the error message. Then non found is listen to every request. If the error message is any exception happened in here, it's global cached. And now we have this app, but we haven't put this to a listening. So now we just fill our index. We include this app, then I put this separate. You actually can do a unit test simple. For example, in this case, not this one, then we just add a unit test. No, everything's okay. As soon as I can run it. I'm going to have the test for the rest, so I just copy paste. And before test, I'm going to see if we could up this one. And we actually, before up this one, we also need to up our servers. So we actually say post up. This will run this command will run this command inside this command scripts. This command. So let's start it. So if I just cd out, I'm in here, so I couldn't run this command. It'll take a bit of hello. Previous error because I have this running before, so actually named the same. So this port actually already be token. Even I stop it actually, and this is still running. So actually just delete what I did. I just delete all of the Docker container, and so the user IDs, and now I go into a new point. It actually the npm run up, it will pull up the new instance, and now if I run npm up, it actually is okay. And now I could make a request since I just made a request. So if I already made this request successful, so you have the seed ID over there. Since I already have this in our database, if I request again, it will tell me you are already logged in. Why? Because in our this is for register. Okay, so if I go into our load and go into the register load, and when I go to here, we first check you suppose is a guest, and after you suppose guest, then we go into see you are already logged in, because this one it actually rejected you because you already have the session ID, so it actually go here, you already handle in this one, so you are the guest. And if I go into log out, you see our log out is somebody else, but it will listen to this request to have this session, since it's going to remove the session. So that is why I said in here when you log out, not just if you log out, going to the login, you have a log out. Going to this one, this log out, and we just going to see if you have this session, then I'm going to destroy this session. Actually, when you go into log out in a real production, you don't do just this one. These are just shortcutted. If you go into here, and this authentication, going to you make sure, not just is or logged in is this one. Not just check this user ID, you actually check this user ID is this user to log out. You don't want someone else log out for you. For these demo showcases, I just simply just log you out. Now I just get rid of this request, the session. Now you can log in again. You cannot register again because you already in the database. So it return invalid email. Why? Because if you go into the register, in here we actually do it is the guest, we search, you already found, so actually return invalid email. So but you can log in now. So 4 and 1 2 3 5. So since this you already registered, so you cannot register again, but you can log out. So this is you can log in. So if you send a request, you are going to log in. In your session, you have this one, and it is half hour available. And since now all of this API is done, so now we go into my next topic will be before I move on, actually like do a unit test. But I put in my next session. So that is the reason why I can put this app, if I close all of the file, I can simply put all of these index and this app together, but instead of put them all together, I put this separate. So I could start app.test.ts. Actually already I just stop this stop, it actually only stop this server, and the MongoDB and Redis didn't stop. Control C only stop the server running. API learning. And now I'm going to I just copy paste the code. So actually going to have the jest.config set up. And now it's fine. So now you could run test. Did I write in here? So if I run npm test, suppose this. So now you have all of this unit test. I write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unit test because we only have the load. I didn't test all of this one. All of this actually pass. All the loading is pass. And the unit test, when you use this library to do API test, is quite very simple. So you expect the 404, and if you post and other things, you do this if asynchronous test. So this cover all of it, include. That is why I have separate this one and this one, and this covers all over. All over the API level. My next topic we are going to React, and also maybe include some unit test also in React. And thank you for watching. If you feel this is helpful, please click subscription and like it. Bye bye.